Now we're going to go over the intermediate tank. There's a dedicated storage tank. This is a 12,000 gallon double wall tank next to the power plant that supplies fuel into the day tank. And so this has to be filled periodically. We'll go over a procedure for that. But it supplies the daily fuel into the day tank. On top of the intermediate tank there's a clock gauge. This reads just like a clock. The short hand is feet, the long hand is inches. And you need to keep track, check that on a daily basis. When it gets to the 50% level, you need to refill that tank so you have a good supply of fuel on hand. At the far end of this tank, there's a connection up there for a water draw. Typically you'll find somewhere on the top of the tank there will be a water draw connection, and you have to check the tank periodically to see if there's water accumulating in it and draw it off. You can get additional information on this procedure on the bulk fuel disc. Now we're going to look at the actuator valve. On every intermediate tank there will be a motorized ball valve that is operated by the day tank. When the day tank is calling for fuel, this valve will open, and then when the day tank is done filling, it will automatically close. This one here is installed inside of a box. Some of them may be surface mounted on the tank. You can see the shaft rotate 90 degrees when the day tank is calling for fuel. In an emergency, if you had to get fuel into the day tank by a hand pump, you can grab the shaft of this valve with a pair of pliers and open at 90 degrees. That would only be an emergency procedure. If you had to do that, you'd want to get a replacement valve as soon as possible. Okay, I'm going to give a basic overview of the procedure for filling the intermediate tank. This will vary quite a bit from facility to facility depending on the design of the tank farm. This control panel happens to be inside the power plant. In other cases it may be installed at the intermediate tank or it may be installed at the bulk tank. You'll need to refer to your operations manual for your tank farm to get the exact procedure. Typically there would be valves on the bulk tank you would have to open, possibly a manual valve on the intermediate tank. Then you'd have to turn the power on the control panel, hit the start button. Then during the procedure you'd want to monitor the level of the intermediate tank throughout the filling process. Also check the levels on the bulk tank to make sure you don't run dry and run the pump dry. When you reach the full level, which would typically be at 90%, you'd press the stop button. Then you'd go back, turn the power off, and go back and close the valves that you opened at the beginning of the procedure.